Hi, thank you for being with me for this healing for the thyroid. The thyroid is a lovely little gland that sits in the base of the throat. It's shaped a little bit like a butterfly. And its job is to sit at the gateway to the digestive system, right? So the food comes in the mouth and everything has to go through the throat area, and it monitors the nature of the food that's coming through into the physiology, and then it communicates to the organs of the digestive system how to address that food. So it's a very smart organ, and it plays a very important communication role in the body. And it's interesting because this is the area of the body that's designed for communication. So it sits at this fifth chakra area, both communication and interaction with the world. And most of the energies from this throat chakra are expressed either out through verbal communication or out through the hands, where we interface with the world. But the thyroid has this interesting role to play because its relationship is to interact more inwardly. So it's a communicator and it's a doer, but it's an inward doer, an inward communicator. And of course, all the structures of our body have communication potential, but of course the communication is expressed through the universal language of perception and experience rather than through speech specifically. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to look into the thyroid of everyone who's joined me out in video land in the YouTube world. Thank you for being with me. I'm just looking at everyone's thyroids. Don't you love modern technology? It's good stuff. One of the most common imbalances that I'm seeing in people's thyroids is a lack of trust. And that's very interesting for a communicator, isn't it? Because trust is based on honesty. And for there to be lack of self-trust or lack of trust in the thyroid area indicates a blockage of the flow of truth. Now, we know the heart is the custodian of our deeper truths, how we feel about things, right? The emotions. And of course, the deeper truth that comes from the heart flows up through various meridians and energy channels up into the brain area. And the heart's truth is then analyzed and synthesized and eventually sometimes expressed as speech, sometimes not, but at least one would hope honesty towards oneself, at least the ability to admit what you really feel and think about things. I'm also seeing, for a lot of people, as I'm reading into this, it looks like there's some energy that goes back a long way. Like I'm really seeing patterns that go back like hundreds of years, longer than these physiologies. So what that tells me is we're working with ancestral energies, possibly working with old energies in the soul from previous times before being in the human body. Our souls are old, very old. The first energy that's coming forward, just to give you the inside scoop, what I'm doing, I'm seeing, I take what I see, and I lay it to rest in the source of pure inner silence of being. When that happens, answers start to come. Impressions start to come. Like the impression of it being old, for example. Also, another impression coming is the impression of compassion, deep compassion. You know, it's an interesting thing about the physical body. Our physical bodies are very wise, and the wisdom of the physical body, it goes back way longer than the actual presence of these physical bodies on Earth, because Our bodies come from a very old tradition of bodies. Like there have been bodies on this earth, maybe not human, but bodies of all varying types for like millions of years, right? So our bodies are part of that tradition. And our bodies understand reality from this perspective of experience and perception. So our bodies are always speaking the universal language of perception and experience. They communicate truth to us. Even if the body falls ill, this is a way that the body is communicating the need for attention in a particular area. If you are here and you're looking at this thyroid healing, it's probably because there's something going with the thyroid. So what we're looking at is one of the first steps in your process, one of the first steps in the process of analyzing and synthesizing experience, because that's what food really is to the body. To the body, food is the experience of the universe. It's the part of the universe that we bring inside ourselves, right? And so that's processing is a matter of taking it from its larger form and breaking it into smaller pieces, and then smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually to such small pieces when you get down to the gut area that we're dividing it up into bits of consciousness. The thyroid is one of the first steps in that process. And the more difficult experiences to deal with are experiences that involve the breaking down or the loss of structure in the relative field. Our senses of perception and everywhere in our head is kind of oriented out to the relative material level of creation. And when things start to break down in that area, that's when experience becomes difficult to deal with. So there's some fear in the thyroid. As we put attention, like right now, fear in the thyroid, I'm putting attention, I'm dropping it into my silence, my infinite silence. And that gives you a chance to also put attention on your thyroid and feel this little bit of fear that's there. And the fear is the fear of losing truth, basically, because any problem, no matter how severe, no matter how terrible, if it's illuminated by the light of truth, it becomes handleable. Truth gives us the tools to cope with difficult situations. And actually, coping with difficult situations is a self-empowering process. So the trick here is to support the ability of the thyroid to extract truth from any situation, from any experience, from any food, from any condition whereby we are processing experience, understanding feelings, to extract the truth, to see clearly. The way this is done is by maintaining a flow of truth also in the verbal mechanism. If we use our verbal mechanism and the power of our speech inappropriately to say lie or to produce effects in the environment which are destructive or non-life supporting, then what happens is the ability to hold truth in this area is weakened. So one of the action steps, and this is just purely on the superficial level, action step is to be at least true to yourself. At least admit your truth, what you feel. Even if maybe you feel that it's not reflective of your full potential or nice or whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because we're each starting right where we're at. And it's good to just take the truth where it's at, because if we can do that, then the coping mechanisms can be applied to the situation, whatever it is. And the outcome is evolution and progress and success and self-empowerment. Clearing mistrust, more mistrust from the throat area. And I'm just feeling into everyone's throat area. There's a very lively quality of consciousness in the throat. It has a level of intelligence to it, which is anchored to eternal wisdom, the ability to bring forth new knowledge, the ability to expand out of difficult situations is the gift of the throat area. So it's a beautiful thing. It's very precious. So that information, that truth is actually moving into the tissues of the throat and healing the throat. It is the antidote. It's the antidote for problems with the throat. A lot of people, how many people have an autoimmune disease or like Hashimoto's, something like that, that's making trouble for the thyroid? This immune disease is a byproduct of the body turning on its own nature, attacking itself. And it does that when something does not seem to be aligned according to the body. Something there is not fully aligned with your divine potential. So when the expressions at the superficial level of creation are not aligned with divine potential, then those structures have to break down in order for something better aligned to emerge. If you're having a problem in this area, don't worry. It's only there in order to support evolutionary transformation. And what I'm doing is I'm helping you break it down right now. I'm like saying, these are the components, truth, for example, and being aligned with your divine potential, for example, honoring the fact that the throat has this incredible ability, the whole vocal mechanism, the whole speech center and inner communication, outer communication, right there. There's like a little special level of communication where the inner understanding, the thyroid that's monitoring what's going with the food, and inside with the vocal mechanism that's interacting with the outside. Right there's a very interesting dynamic in the gap between inner communication and outer communication. It's very powerful. That gap is actually the structure that supports this ability for new knowledge or new wisdom to emerge from the throat area. Because the gap represents eternal silence. It represents your divine self. So the divine self is seated. There's an aspect of divine self seated right there in the throat. And it's from that gap that the wisdom of the ages, cosmic wisdom, the eternal wisdom that's held in the great archives of creation, has access. You have access to it. It has access to you. This is the place, okay? I'm seeing it. I'm telling you what I'm seeing. This is the place from where your ability to self-nurture, self-honor, self-support, self-protect, it must come from here. And remember, the energy of the body flows up, right? Ideally, it's flowing up. It flows up and down, but mostly it flows up. And the heart is the area where the sort of essential elements of the way we self-interact are born. How do we identify ourselves? How do we feel about ourselves? Those energies are there. And then they can come up here. So the heart kind of knows the most intimate inner truths of self. And so these intimate inner truths are born of the relationship of the divine with its own nature. This relationship of divinity with its own nature is the source of everything that manifests in creation, including ourselves. So if for any reason there's anything less than self-support, self-acknowledgement, self-understanding, self-love, self-protection, then whatever that is a misinterpretation or a corruption of the primordial impulse of creation to manifest the body. So I offer the suggestion, if you feel that that greater self-love would also be a support, I have a video on that as well. And I'll put that as a link at the end of this video. Thank you for being with me. I hope this really helps a lot. May your thyroid be healthy and strong and stable and balanced throughout time.